Hey guys, and welcome to episode 2 slash part 2. And it's not really a part or anything, it's just a separate thing going over stuff. So, in the previous one, we talked about the program itself, and this time we're going to be talking about creating movement controls in the program. Just basic movement controls. These are going to be ones that I use quite often, and you can modify them yourself any way that you want. Now, watch the previous video if you don't know what you're doing. Otherwise, if you're looking for a movement tutorial, then I mean you're in the right place. Um, but let's go right into it. So, as we stated before, objects are the things that you will use, and sprites are the images. You should have created a character sprite. Mine is just a little dog thing. I mean, it doesn't look amazing, but it's a little dog. So we're going to go over to objects, and we're going to create a new object, and let's rename it obj underscore character. I'm calling everything character because who knows what your thing is. But if you know what your thing is, like guy, just call it guy. It doesn't matter. So over here, we're going to select the sprite that the object uses. It's going to use the little dog sprite. So if we go into the room, we can put the dog sprite in the room. I mean, it's a little jumping ahead of it to put this in the room, but here's our little guy. He's just sitting in the room, right? So now let's go into back to the character. So with objects, and you can click this button up here to get rid of all these things real quick, or you can just, click the things to get rid of them individually. So objects have events. These are things that will happen while the object is in the room. So what you can do is there's a bunch of different types of events that they have. So if the object collides with another object, if the object when the object is created, so when it's first made into the thing, when the object is destroyed, when this step is going to happen every time. There's alarms, which are basically just timers, which we won't be using because they're not very useful. You can make it do stuff when players press keys, whatever, all that stuff. Okay, so the basic ones that you'll use for most things are create and step. The other ones have specific applications that we could talk about later, but not right now. So create and step. So create, this is just everything in the create step is going to happen one time as soon as the object enters the world for the first time, right? So this is where you're going to create variables and such. Now, if you're kind of experienced in coding, then you can skip ahead. I will have something in the description that you can click to get to the part where I actually go over the controls, but I'm going to go over really quickly how programming works in a general sense. I mean, I feel like you guys should be able to understand it a little bit, but it might be hard if you have no experience. Anyway, so with coding, you have variables, which are, if pretend in math how you have x can be whatever you want it to be. You can make x increase or decrease. Well, in coding, you have variables that are any name you want it to be. So we're going to have something called, like we can have a variable called um, bones, like how many bones the dog collects. So bones equals 0, which means that when the thing is first created, the dog has 0 bones, and then as he goes, when he collides with something, it can increase his bone score. So bones is just something to store a value, and anything that you type as a word is going to, the game system is going to assume is a variable, right? So we're going to create one called HSPD. This is a variable which means horizontal speed, okay? Now that's just going to be set equal to 0, and I'll go back over this if you skipped. I'll have to mention this again. So most of the time, the end of your code of each line of code is going to be ended with a semicolon, except for a few specific cases. So some of the major things that you need to remember if you're new to coding, which I assume if you're still watching this, you might be. So there's a few things. So there's if, then there's also else, and there's also for, there's also while. So those are really the 4 main things that we're going to be using. And so if is going to let you check certain things of a variable. So say we'll call this bones again for the example. Bones is equal to 3. So we set bones equal to 3 here, right? How are we going to do anything with this variable? Well, we have to first check if the variable, say, is at a specific score. So if bones is equal to 3, then it will do what's inside these brackets. So with if, you do if, then you use a parenthesis, then you use the name of the variable, and then you use the what you want to check, and then you use the value or whatever you want to do. So if bones is equal to, you can make it equal to, check if it's equal to another variable like max, like maybe there's a, sorry, maximum, because that's a function, which I'll go over later. So if bones is equal to maximum, so let's create a function called, a variable called maximum. So maximum equals 4. So this is checking if bones is equal to maximum, and you need two equal signs, because if you do one equal signs, then it's just going to try and set the value equal to. So 2 is what they use for checking. So two equal signs. So if bones is equal to maximum, then it's going to do this stuff, right? So we can see that 3 is not equal to 4, so this stuff won't be used, and it'll just keep going. Now, if they're equal to each other, then it's going to go inside these open and closed brackets. With an if statement, you always need the open and closed brackets, unless you only have one line of code. But inside the code, inside the brackets, you can put something like bones equals 0. So once they hit the maximum, it resets, right? So you can do something like that. So bones equals 0, and that's all good. Now, another thing you can do, so that's just checking values of a specific function or a specific score, right? A specific variable. You're checking functions of a variable. Now, also keep in mind that if you don't know this, there's a few different things you can check. So equals is going to check if they're equal to each other. Greater than is checking if the left one's greater than the right. Less than is checking if the left one's less than the right. Greater than or equal to is like that. Less than or equal to is like that. And that's pretty much all the ones that you'll be using. So you can check different things. So if bones is less than maximum, then it'll do something else and stuff like that. So now if you have a condition that you want to happen, if something doesn't happen, you can use not. So if the not is the exclamation point, so you can say if bones does not equal to maximum, right? Then we can make it say bones equals bones plus 1. So that's just going to say that if bones doesn't equal the maximum, so if we're at 0 bones right now and maximum is 3, if bones doesn't equal the maximum, then it's going to increase the bones. Just keep increasing it until it reaches the maximum. Once it reaches the maximum, it won't do it again, okay? Now, if you want something to happen if this doesn't happen, so let's say bones equals maximum, right? If they equal each other, and then you want something else to happen, right after the if statement, you need to put an else statement, which else is just an if that only occurs if the if before it is used. So it could be kind of hard to explain exactly without you trying some things with it. But here we have, so if the bones equals maximum, so it is true, then it's going to do bones equals 0. It ignores this, okay? But if bones doesn't, this bones is not the same as the maximum, so this is not true. So it doesn't do these. It doesn't set bones to 0. It doesn't do this. Instead, it set bones to 1 million. Okay. So if they're not the same, then if they're not the same, if this doesn't happen, then it will set it to 1 million, right? So that's all good and all. Now, there's one more thing that you might have thought of. What if you combine the two together? You can do else if bones is greater than maximum. You can put whatever you want in here. This is just an example. So else if, what else if is going to do is it means if this doesn't happen, right? Just like with else, if this doesn't happen, the next one is going to attempt to happen. So if this doesn't happen, it will try to make this happen, and then it will do it. Now, if this does happen, then it skips over this statement right here. So if bones is equal to maximum, if 3 is equal to 3, right, then it will say, yes, set the bones equal to 0, and it will just jump out. It won't do this other one. But if bones is, say, more than maximum, it will say, it's not here, so we skip over this, and we go to this, and it checks this, and yes, it's bigger than maximum, so it sets the bones to 1 million. Now, if we had bones of 2, which is less than 3, so it goes here, says don't do this, goes to the next one. This one is not true because bones is less than maximum, not greater. So it skips over that, and then it's over. So that's if and else. Hopefully you guys understand that slightly. Next we have, actually I like the two variables. Next we have for. and while. So I'll really just go over while because you can use them both. They both do the same thing. While just means that it's going to loop as long as the condition is true. So let's say we have while bones is less than maximum, okay? So if bones is less than maximum, right? Then we are going to do bones equals bones plus 1. Okay, so what this is doing is saying that you're adding 1 to the current score of bones, right? Until it equals the maximum. Once bones is equal to maximum, it's gonna stop doing this. So you're gonna come into here, you're gonna continually do this over and over again until bones equals maximum, and then it's gonna jump out and continue with whatever you have going on down here. Okay, so that's how loops work. It goes into it, and then it continually does it until this condition is not true, and then it continues on. Those are the 3 main things you need. Now we are back to what we're going to do to make this guy move around. So the last thing that you need to know, and this is something that everybody needs to know, so that's why it's included after the skipped portion, is functions. So the thing that mainly makes the main kind of backbone of GameMaker Studio is all the functions they have. If I just type A, right? Just AB, right? It'll come up with this whole long thing that may be a little bit overwhelming, but eventually you'll be able to learn them all. But there's a few that you just really need to know right now, and there's not too many. But as you can see, it's going to tell you all these functions, and functions are going to do things that you want it to do. There's also built-in variables that are like always there, and there's also constants. So functions are going to be really useful for, say, checking when a player clicks a button. You can check you can check if somebody presses a key on their keyboard using code. You can check that, but the code for it is super long. So what you want to do is instead use a function, so you just write one line that will check if they press the key, which is nice. And they have that in most other things, but that's just an example. They have that in most other game making programs, checking keys and stuff. That's simple, but it's a good example. So first we're going to make so what we want to do ultimately, let's think about what we want to do. We want to make it so the object can move up, down, left, and right when we use the arrow keys. We can also do WASD. That's a good example for you, but let's do the WASD first. So we want to make them move up, down, left, and right. Now we could just check if they press the up key and then move them up. If they press the down key, move them down. If they press the left key, move them left. If they press the right key, move them right. We could do that, but it's a lot nicer to use one variable to say whether they're moving up or down and one variable to say whether they're moving left or right. It's really helpful for other things that you do later on and it also cuts back on how many variables you have because those will take up space, maybe lag your game eventually if you have a ton, but it's not something to worry about necessarily. So hspeed, this is, we'll just call it, hspd equals 0. So hspd, and we can't just say speed because speed is a variable that's used in the game already. That's why it's green. So you can't really use that if you want something new. So we're saying that the horizontal speed, which what we'll do is if the horizontal speed is 1, it's going to move to the right. If the horizontal speed is -1, it's going to move to the left. Okay? Then we're also going to create another variable called vertical speed. Just like that. Now, this is in the create event. It's going to happen as soon as you have this thing come into the room, which is instantaneously, pretty much. So then the step is going to be looped. So everything that happens in here is going to happen over and over again every frame of the game, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to say horizontal speed, ready, is equal to, and this is where we're going to use the functions, keyboard underscore check, okay? And then vk underscore right. There we go. So what this is doing is if the user is pressing VK, it means virtual keyboard. It's just something you'll have to remember if you want to use the arrow keys or space. It's VK in front of it. Anyway, so VK right checks. This is going to check if they're holding down the right key. If the right key is being pressed, then it's going to return a 1 value. So this whole thing will be 1. So let's just pretend it's pressed. So that's 1. Now we're going to do that. Now we're going to subtract keyboard underscore check VK underscore left. Now, what you may already notice is if I press the right key, this is if it's checking for the right key, then it will have 1 minus, and if I'm not pressing the left key, it will be 0. So we will have 1 minus 0, which means h speed is 1. Now, if we're pressing just the left key, then we will have 0 minus 1, which is negative 1. And if we're pressing both keys at the same time, we will have 1 minus 1, which is 0. The extra thing you want to add here is you want to multiply it by walk speed, okay? So we're going to put parentheses around it to multiply the entire value, whatever we get from here, by a number, which is walk speed, only because we want to make it move faster. So you don't want to move 1 pixel at a time. So we're going to create a new variable called walk speed, and we're going to set it equal to 4. So instead, you'll be moving 4 pixels per frame, which is may be fast, but it's not very fast. So vertical speed is slightly different. Now this one is something that is important for you to know, and I'm just going to copy and paste it and put it in. So instead we're using down and up, VK down and VK up. But you may think these are kind of backwards because down is where a positive number should be and up is where a negative number should be. That's because the origin of the room, this room, is in the top left corner. So this point up here is 0, 0, and then it becomes positive in the y direction as you go down, and positive in the x direction as you go to the right. So you want the positive number to be on the left side of this math equation, which is simple, and the negative number to be on the right. That's it. Okay, that's all you have to do. This will give you either a positive 4 or negative 4. This will give you a positive 4 or negative 4, depending on what keys you press. Then you have to adjust the x. So the x position of your x, just putting an x will say the x position of the object that you're currently on. So x, which is our current object, equals x plus horizontal speed, because that's associated with your x. Y equals y plus vertical speed. There you go. So what this number, it'll give you a number either positive or minus 4 or 0, and it will add it to your current coordinates. So we're going to click the little run to play around with it, see what it looks like. Let's go in here. Okay, so as you can see, I'm moving this guy around, and we are able to move. It's really tiny, but we are able to move it around just like so, really easily. Woo, 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 woo. I mean, you can move diagonally if you hold both at the same time, which maybe you want that, maybe you don't. I'll show you a little trick to getting rid of that, but here you go. You move, and everything's nice. Okay, so now another thing you may be wondering is like collisions, but we'll deal with that later. So we have the moving to the left and right and moving up and down. So that's pretty much all there is. This episode is probably going to be kind of long because I explained some of the coding specifics. I'm sorry about that if it seems too long. Now, the second thing I'll show is just how to be really specific. So this is nice because look, you only have 2 lines here like this, right? But if you want to make it so it can only go in like only up or only down, you're going to have to use what I stated before, which is a bunch of ifs. So if keyboard underscore check vk underscore right, so you're checking if they're pressing the right key, and you are saying the horizontal speed is equal to 1, right? And then you're going to have an else if, okay? And then you just keep doing it. Else if left, set it to -1. Else if up, set it to 1. Else if down, set it to whatever. So you just need a bunch of else ifs and ifs, okay? So then the last thing is if you want to do it so that it works with like the WASD. So WASD, you just add ORD and then a quotation mark and the key in capital letters, just like that. So ORD is basically taking whatever character you put in here and giving it to you what it would be on the keyboard, being a W, and that's pretty much all you need to know about this. I mean, I haven't used ORD too much, so I couldn't tell you exactly what it's doing inside the function, but this is just what you do if you want to change it to like letter keys on the keyboard instead of arrow keys. So you just use ORD to select the key, and then the character of the key that you want to use, which would be D. Maybe you want to use G instead. That would just be a G. So let's hit play, and you can't see it. You can't exactly see me doing it, moving the arrow, the WAS and D keys, but I am doing it, I assure you, and I am moving with WAS and D. So that's pretty much all there was for this one, guys. And I said at the end of each video, I would present kind of a little thing for you to do. So if you're still following along with that, I would say that let's think. How about this? So the challenge for you this week would be to design the thing that makes it so you can only move W, A, S, and D, and you can only move in one direction at a time. So you can only move up, down, or left or right. But and you can use the else if. You can use whatever you know when you're coding, but just try and make something that does only this movement, this kind of movement. And then in a bonus, if you're extra good at coding already or something, or if you're feeling extra spicy, then you can try to make it so that if someone holds two keys at the same time, like I'm doing like this, or they're like this, they're holding two keys at the same time, left and right. Because if you use the else ifs, you might run into the situation where if they hold A and then they hold W, it will prefer to do A instead. Make it so that if they hold two keys at the same time, then it'll basically make it so they don't move at all. So that's just a little bonus if you want to add in. I mean, I don't think you can do it with the else ifs. There's another way to do it, and I'll show you really quickly what I did to do it next episode. But that's all for this one, guys. Thank you so much for showing up. If you found this useful, go ahead and leave a like. If you have something that you would like to see, I mean, I'll try to get to the videos. By the time these videos come out, I will probably be on school break or close to my break in school for the winter. So I'll probably have some recording time, possibly to record some of those videos for you guys to get out, but it might take a few weeks to post them. Okay. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.